Force that. Rogers has got an intercept here. He's 50 metres to the try line. The chaser's coming. They won't get him. Matt Rogers scores an intercept try for the Australians.
Welcome to the Blood Bin, Rogers Sports Management's elite athlete podcast. We're pulling no punches here as we go blow for blow with some of the top athletes and up-and-coming athletes in Australia.
Today on the Blood Bin, we are with Australian boxing royalty Paul Briggs, Australian light heavyweight champion, OPBF light heavyweight champion, Oriental Pacific Boxing Federation light heavyweight champion, world kickboxing champion, father, husband, many titles that run along with your name, mate. Welcome. I'm excited to have a chat with you about your journey in the sport or in the world of combat sports. It's just a world that intrigues me, and to see what fighters put their body through. But I guess we'll start with how you going? What's been happening in your world recently, and how's life?
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and life's good. Life's good. I live in, as you understand, we live in one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Like I was expressing before, I get to work with my wife in my business. We get to do it together, and it's we have a whole lot of fun. We're like two rascals together, so it's always good fun in the gym, in the boxing gym, getting people going. So I'm kind of living the next stage of my dream, I suppose.
Right.
In being able to train the next champions that are coming up the ranks.
Beautiful. So let's go right back to the start. A young star, you're born in New Zealand. When did you move to Australia?
I moved to Australia when I was 2. Yep. My dad got a contract working in the mines, I think, Nabalco in the Northern Territory.
Right.
So we moved to a little coastal town called Gove.
I know Gove.
Yeah.
Very well. I played some rugby league there when I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow. It's you'd understand. It's a beautiful place.
Oh, it's lovely.
Like
untouched, beautiful. Where
it's like that movie. Forget what it's called now, the lagoon or something, and it's like heaven on earth. Some of the water holes you can go to, and that sort of thing.
Plenty of fishing, mud crabs, and all sorts of stuff. Huh?
Amazing animals, good people.
Yeah. The Northern Territory is full of great people. I must say, my parents lived there for many years, and I met some wonderful people up there. So you moved to Northern Territory. How long were you there? Were you there? Was that where you started? Fighting, or you got into the combat sports world? Is that where it began, or was it later on in life?
It's where the seed was planted, And when I was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame, I talked about this exact story: the fact that I was sitting at one corner of a makeshift ring, and my dad was refereeing, and the guys had just chucked on gloves, and there was a whole crowd there, and they were just, punching the hell out of each other. And I was watching this, and I think I was 3 or 4 years old, and I had no concept of what I was looking at, but I just thought, this is me. This is what I came here to do. I just knew right then that fighting was my thing. And I had no concept of what that even meant, obviously, at that age. But it was just this fire that just started burning then, almost like a big furnace. And I thought, all I want to do is fight, and that manifested into some interesting ways, in the future as I got older.
Yeah.
All my life I've just been around it and been attracted to it.
Yeah. And you started out as a kickboxer. Why kickboxing? Where did that come from?
So my father was a boxer, my uncle was a boxer, and my father fought under like 3 different names, on TV ringside, and was
he trying to hide from someone?
No. He just he was a bit of a journeyman, so he had a lot of fights, and there was many times that after fights that my mother said that he would be sitting there, just holding his head, from the pain, and just sort of falling asleep from there. And so she made him promise her that if they ever had sons, they were never going to box. And of course, they had twins, so I was, not just a fighter that was born, but I was born with a sparring partner.
Oh, right,
So
yeah.
it was kind of pretty.
Well, I'm not a twin, but I've got a brother who's a couple of years older, and I know the feeling of being. Well, I wasn't the sparring partner; I was the punching bag. So I was a little brother. So he reckons it toughened me up, got me ready for my career. He's probably right.
100%. Well, my twin is 6'5" and he's a heavyweight, So I said to him at a Christmas thing once, the reason why I could fight and why I went so far is because I grew up with you, and so I credit, getting punched from pillar to post by a heavyweight, to I credit that to my success.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. And my brother jokes about it, but he made me tough. Like he literally just grinded me into the ground on if it wasn't every day, it was every second day. We'd play handball, get in a fight.
Yep.
We'd play, footy in the backyard, get in a fight.
Yep.
Mum's pulling us apart every day. I guess, similar story.
100%. And once we decided to get into it, like Dad started teaching us basics, really, really young. And my mum I think we got to an age, my mum just said, no, stop right now. This isn't happening. So then that seed had been planted, in my brother and I. And then it was just like, well, martial arts, then at least that's a bit of discipline, that sort of thing. So we did all sorts of kung fu's and karates and blah, 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 all the rest of it. And then one day Mum and Dad went to Thailand for a holiday and us kids stayed. They were only gone for a week or something. And my sister was a lot older, so she was looking after us. And when they come back, I remember Dad walked in the house and he had a VHS video in his hand, and he just threw it to me and my brother, and he said, "Check this out." We put it in. It was a VHS video from one of the stadiums over there, from the Muay Thai fights.
Yeah, right.
We just heard the most insane music.
What is that music called? Yeah,
well,
ringing sort of. Music.
And they've got bells and drums and this. It's like a clarinet thing, and it makes the most insanely annoying screeching sound. How they call it music, I don't know, but we were listening to this and just watching it and going, "Oh my God, this is us!" Like if we can't punch people in the head, we can at least kick them and knee them and elbow them. So.
Yeah.
And my mum said, well, at least the damage is getting spread around the body.
Right.
So it's not all about the head damage. Yeah. That was her biggest concern with boxing. So that was the next best thing. And all of a sudden we're doing more. So.
Yeah, wow. And, I mean, in Australia at that time, I mean, we've had some great champions, the John Wayne Parrs and the Nathan Corbetts, but they were probably after you, or John Wayne Parr was probably around the same time, but it wasn't a big sport. I mean, it's still probably not. It's nothing like it is in Thailand. But
no, it's big in Australia, but it's not what we call mainstream.
Yeah,
And the interesting thing is, I sit in my office in my gym and look out the office window at John Wayne Parr's gym. We used to run together every morning and all the rest of it. Nathan Corbett, when he was over from the States about a month or two ago, he called in and we were sitting there reminiscing, talking about how we used to train together and all the rest of it. So. It's interesting that some of the better fighters that have come out of this country at one time or another we've all been associated. Yeah. So that's how small the sport is.
Right.
I remember going to the first ever Muay Thai fight that was I witnessed it. I think I was 14 years old or 13 years old. It was at Rumours nightclub in the city in Brisbane. It doesn't even exist anymore. And these two guys fought in these big shorts and yeah, it was just back then. It was the kickboxing days, there were pads on the feet and the flashy pants and.
Well, Kickboxer was a pretty big movie back then as well, so it sort of like gained a little bit of this underground following, didn't it?
100%. But after witnessing that first ever fight in Queensland or in Australia, the first ever Muay Thai fight in Australia, it just went gangbusters from then. Yeah. And then obviously the movie Kickboxer came out and it was off and running.
So you turned pro at 15, and you actually went to Thailand and trained and lived in Thailand?
Yeah, I went to Thailand a couple of times, and then I got to a point where I had an opportunity. I had 8 fights in a year, 8 knockouts, consecutively. And then the rave scene had just sort of begun in Australia. And It was this new underground thing. And I was right into dance music.
I was going to get to that.
Yeah. So, I'd had 8 fights that year. I'd been really disciplined with everything. And I was like, there's massive New Year's Eve parties. And I just want to go to these raves. And my dad said, no, well, there's a big show in Melbourne. Stan Longanides is fighting Sataki Masaki from Japan. And there's a new superstar coming out with him. His name's Kin Tai. And Ian Jacobs, a great fighter from Queensland, was supposed to fight him, but we both fought New Zealand champions at Festival Hall on the same card, and I knocked my opponent out, and Ian had a 12-round war.
Right.
And so he was beat up. He was a little bit injured and couldn't fight Tai Kin. So my dad said, this is the 9th fight of the year, you're going to take it. And I said, I don't want to. We had the biggest Barney over it.
Yeah.
And I said, Dad, I've had 8 fights this year. I've been training non-stop. There's big parties on. These DJs are coming out from Holland. And he said, I don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
We've worked hard all year for this opportunity right now.
Yeah.
So I took the fight, knocked him out in the first round. And next thing, I'm all over, Japanese magazines and all the rest of it. And, the headline was school kid knocks out Japanese superstar. So that got me a promotional contract in Japan. I started going back and forth from Japan, fighting some of the best fighters on the planet.
Yeah.
Then I got to age 19 and got the opportunity to fight Winston Walker from England, who was he'd been undefeated for about 5 or 6 years at the time.
Yeah.
And fought him and defeated him over the distance. Really hard fight, and become world champ at 19. And it's crazy. You don't probably understand this. When you have dreams of playing certain teams or making certain sides, and then all of a sudden you're there and you're doing it. And you're sitting there going, okay, what next?
Yeah, well, I always say that I think that's why having goals is so important, because I don't think, like, when you achieve the goal, it's not like, lightning flashes and, fireworks go off, and it's the fun and the draw and the excitement comes from chasing that goal.
Yep.
When you achieve it, if you don't set another goal real quick, you're going to sort of lose your way.
100%.
And I found that a couple of times throughout my career. So did you stumble across that at that point?
Definitely. And you could sit here and you can talk to young people, young athletes about this, yet they're never going to understand it until they go through it.
Yeah.
Like the wisdom has to be gained through the experience.
Yep.
So you can sit there and say, look, this is what you're going to experience. These are the hurdles you're going to have. This is the road that you're going to go down. And these are the potential successes and potential hurdles. And not until they go through it can you determine how they're going to handle it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, then I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go there and I'm going to do this and I'm going to achieve that. And I had goals sort of set, but as soon as I become world champion, all of a sudden all these fighters that I dreamt of fighting, they're like, oh, I don't want to fight him. And so I sort of sat there for nearly a whole year just waiting for a fight.
Right. So no one was prepared to
step
in the
these
ring with you?
massive names in Holland. Like the Dutch were just unbelievable Muay Thai fighters, feared. And
I know that Spong, he's a weapon.
Oh, unbelievable. I was in Nathan Corbett's corner in LA when he fought Tyrone Spong. I'd been working on Nate's hands. I said he's got an amazing Ukrainian boxing coach working with him. So his hands are going to be unbelievable, and he ended up stopping Nath. So Nath knocked him out the first time. He came back and stopped Nathan in the second. But it's just you've got to be able to, like you said, it's even more so than just setting new goals. It's like, what's inspiring me now, and who do I want to become now? Yeah. Because once you become world champion, where do you go from there?
Yeah. Well, that's what impresses me so much about the likes of a Michael Jordan or a Tiger Woods or a Greg Norman. These guys that stayed at the top of their craft for so long. It's like, well, I've done it, and they've stayed there. The discipline that is required to do that. I mean, the discipline to get there for starters, the sacrifices that have to be made. I mean, as a youngster turning pro at 15, I mean, most 15-year-olds aren't thinking about going to Thailand and fighting. Most 15-year-olds aren't going on training camps. Most 15-year-olds are thinking about, you know, the girl they're chasing on the weekend or what they're doing with their mates on Saturday morning or, you know. How did that sit with you? Like, how was life outside of that for you? What were the things that – did you feel like at the time they were sacrifices, or did you feel like, no, this needs to be done because what I really want is over here?
Definitely. I mean, I had a lot of spoils that came with that, you know, like I, you know, owned a car before I even was licensed to drive it, and sat in the garage sort of thing, that sort of stuff. So you know, you got flash clothes that your mates don't have, and you're wearing cool shoes that they can't wear, and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But the downside of that is I got to 18 and you know, from being so disciplined, I mean extremely disciplined, you know, I wouldn't even really drink, let alone anything else, you know, and I got to 18 and on my 18th birthday, oh my God, it was crazy, you know, like I had someone say there's a massive party, there's these DJs coming out from Europe, and yeah, that was a bit of a massive distraction which stayed around for a few years.
Yeah, so the wheels fell off a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Well, actually they didn't fall off. So this is the thing, right? So and I think this happens quite a bit, you know, with sports people. Yeah. Our constitution is so good, you know, so strong that we can burn the candle at both ends, which is never good because ultimately it's going to catch up to you. Yeah. And later on in life it did, you know, catch up to me. I ended up with a stomach tumor and you know, I put all that down to the angry young man that I was and the violent young man that I become, and the toxicity of my body, you know, because of how I had been dishonouring it, you know.
Talk to me about that angry young man. Where did that come from? Was it purely because of the sport? You had to be angry? Did you think you had to be angry?
No, I was raped by a man as a kid, and from that point I was just like, I want to kill men, really want to destroy men, which is interesting because I am a man. Yeah. And so that sort of has been an incredible journey, a massive journey for me. And my only anchor to reality was my twin brother. You know, I used to lay in bed and sort of, he'd be falling asleep and I'd be looking at him and going, okay, I'll just act like him and that's normal. That's how I can be normal, you know, and exist in my mind and not lose my sanity daily. Yeah, you know, and because nobody knew until later in life, and so I had this rage that was, you know, burning within me, sort of thing, and now my mum sort of expresses to my wife. She said, "There's so much that makes sense now, you know. Like I wanted to paint my room black. I only ever wore black. I still, you know, that's been a conditioned thing. Yeah. My main colours are black, but back then it was a very destructive thing. You know? And the only way I could reconcile that and deal with that within myself was to outwardly express that rage and anger that was within me, and that was to hurt as many men as I possibly could. I did it in a positive way in the ring. It was a good thing. But then I had 4 years of my life in between careers, in between my boxing career and my I retired from my Muay Thai career at like 22 or something, or 21. And then 24, I started my boxing career, or 25, started my boxing career. So there was like three to 4 years within that I got involved in standover work and you know, collecting money, and then just that other side of life that was very violent, very very toxic and very destructive. Yeah. Yeah. And
so you weren't collecting money for the Commonwealth Bank?
No. Well, the tax man. But yeah, and because I could fight, it was like, well, we'll get that guy to go and do this job, and you know, you can make 30 grand in 2 minutes. Yeah, right. Sort of thing. Being not so nice human being. But the thing is, one of the hardest things that I've ever had to transform within myself is my ability to turn reaction to response. You know, to not be explosive, and to actually sit and rationalize what could be the best possible outcome in this scenario right now.
Yeah.
You know, what is this moment asking of me?
That's how you think now?
100%.
And back then?
There was no thought. It was just explode.
Yeah, right.
React and then take a step back and go, oh shit, what have I done?
So I'm sure we'll get into that. We'll talk a bit later how that transition happened. But the 4 years of that, and then all of a sudden you think, I'm just going to be a pro boxer now. That can't be something that just, like, were you thinking about it for a while? Was anybody saying to you should box, or did you have someone in your corner who actually thought I got to get you out of this space and I've got to get you back into?
So this is an interesting story because I did the last ever job. I'll call it a job, a standover job that I did, and then we drove 24 hours, did the job, drove 24 hours back to Queensland, and then I was like, right, I'm going to the Gold Coast. John Wayne Parr, funny enough, had just come back from Thailand, and I went to the Indy Race Carnival, and he and I connected, and we hadn't seen each other because he'd been in Thailand for a while, and we were sort of enjoying Indy, I'll say, you know, that weekend, and he said, man, why don't you box? You know, I know your legs are sort of beat up from your Muay Thai career. You should box. I was like, yeah, maybe I should. I'd had 2 attempts on my life with the line of shenanigans, you know, the line of work that I've been involved in. Hasn't got success written all over it, you know, this lifestyle.
Sort of seems there's only one way out, or two ways out: prison or death.
Yeah, I sort of thought, well, after this, I've just got to get in the public eye as quickly as possible, you know, and get this monkey off my back.
Yeah.
And so did that, and then just thought, you know what, now's a really good opportunity for me to master myself, and that's all I wanted to do. And so the road back to even being fit, you know, I was 96 kilos, and I sort of looked and thought, well, who's the light heavyweight champ? Roy Jones Jr. Okay, well, I'm going to fight him. And
right from the start, that's what was in your mind.
Yeah, I was I'll say fat, you know, muscle and fat, sort of out of shape, unhealthy in every way, psychologically, physically, all of it. And I just looked and said, who's the light heavyweight champ? He is. All right, let's aim at fighting him. And so I moved in with John Wayne, and then he said, oh, you should just have a boxing fight, you know, make some cash. And I said, yeah, sweet. So I went and knocked out some dude on a card on a Mark Erickson card at the, I think it was the Southport RSL.
Yep.
And my coach at the time was sitting in the crowd watching, and he told someone and said, I want to meet this kid, and they drove me out to this amazing property in Nerang, and he said, mate, I can get you a world title shot. And I said, okay, let's do it. He said, right, we'll start Monday. Where are you living? And I said, a race course, near the race course. Yep. In Bundle. And he said, well, you'll be running out to my place every day. It was 14.5 Ks. Yeah, wow. So I was like, oh my God, all right, let's get your head around that. And just started running out there. I just did a Goggins. Yeah, right. And just went, right, time to go. So I think the first time it took me 2 hours and 20 minutes or something. I was nearly in tears, you know, when I got there, and my body was a mess. So then the coach drove me home, and the next day it took me like 2 hours and 18 minutes. And, and it was just a daily thing, and then grinding. Yeah, just went from there, and the rest is history.
Mate, that's, you know what I say to a lot of people, these people, they're trying to, you know, change who they are, or change their path. And I always say, you can't do it with little change. It's got to be radical change. Radical change. Yep. Like, it's the only way. Otherwise, you'll just slip straight back to where you were. And that seems like radical change was the thing that just, you know, it's either all or it's nothing. I've been all or nothing all of my life, and I understand that, and I've known that, and I've really, at this point in my life now, at nearly 50, I've really brought all of that into balance. Yep. And reconciled all those parts of myself
to then, like if I sort of can't put an old head on young shoulders, they say that, but like if I had the mindset now and the understanding now when I was fighting, no one would have come close. You know?
I agree. I look back at my career and I think, oh man, if I thought like I thought now back then. I think the last few years of my career, I started to sort of manifest that type of mindset. And,
yes.
We had a fair bit of success at the Titans when I was there. And I think I put that down to a really key senior leadership group that, we were a part of, that were able to sort of get the best out of the people, the younger guys around us. We were a bit of a ragtag bunch, but we sort of went all right. Mate, your boxing career, you had 26 fights, 30 fights, 26 wins, 17 knockouts.
Yep.
You didn't mind knocking blokes out?
Didn't mind it at all.
Yeah. But I just want to move into sort of, I guess, probably what's been rated as the 24 best rounds of boxing is you had 2 fights against Tamaz Adamak.
Yeah.
You kicked off with a fight in Chicago.
Yep.
And for anybody who hasn't watched that fight, just go onto YouTube and just Google it. Briggs versus Adamak 1. It is unbelievable. Like that's what boxing. That's like I grew up watching boxing. Tyson through the 80s.
Yep.
And that's what boxing was. It was before the UFC. Blew up. And I mean, how was it walking into the United Center in Chicago? It's a far cry from the Southport RSL or Southport Sharks or Carrara Stadium. I mean, some of the places you fought prior.
100%.
On a Don King promotion. Tell me about how the lead up to that and what that fight meant to you at that time.
I've always had a bit of a ritualistic thing that I do when I get in the ring. I'll take a big deep breath and just look around me and just take it all in and absorb it, which I never did. Through my Muay Thai career, I was too busy trying to become world champion. Then all of a sudden, the career's over. Yeah. So I thought, well, now that I've got this second crack, I know what I'm doing. I know how to smell the roses. I know how to take my time and really enjoy every single aspect of what this is about. Which really helped me a lot with, developing an unpregnable, unbreakable mindset as well. But I remember I was standing in I was coming out from into the stadium of the United Center, and the woman is standing there with the head cans on, and for HBO. And she was waiting to give us the instructions to go when the music cues and that sort of thing. And we're standing there, and she's standing beside me. She was right beside me, and she looked at me and she goes, "Guess how many eyes are on you right now?" And I was like, "What?" It's the last thing I'm thinking about. Yeah. She said that it was something like 275 million people worldwide are watching you right now. And I was just like, I couldn't even reconcile that. I was just like, okay, but later on, 10, 20 years later, I sit about it and just think, far out, that's crazy,
Isn't it?
Because as a young kid, I used to lay on my bed and look up at my wall, and I had all these different pages of the Ring magazine, of Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns. Yep. And I had it all over my wall, and they fought for the green belt, the WBC belt, and they were wearing raised gloves, Cleto raised gloves. Yep. And they were fighting on HBO, and I was sponsored by Rays. I fought for the green belt, and it was on HBO, and Don King was a promoter, and Don King ended up being my promoter. Yeah. And so as far as like a lot of work that I do now with athletes and general population people around, creating the reality that you want to create and creating the life that you want to create, I sat there on my bed as a kid and looked at these pictures every single day and saw myself there. And saw myself doing it, and saw myself with the beads of sweat running down my face, just like Sugar Ray Leonard had. Like I spent time with Ray in LA, when I was over there, and I was just, even at that time, I was sitting in a Range Rover. We're driving to some billionaire's place with Sylvester Stallone, because they're showing. We're going to watch Felix Sturm, Oscar De La Hoya fight.
Right.
and we're with the guy who created Survivor and all these different Mark Burnett. Yeah. So he was there with his lovely partner who was just, they were just amazing people. And all of those things, those experiences, when you're sitting there, I'm thinking, I've seen all this, I've visualized all this, and I'm sitting there in this billionaire's house. I'm not even going to talk about the house. It was just crazy, right? And I'm sitting there with Sugar Ray Leonard sitting beside me, and we're talking like a couple of mates watching this fight. Like, man, this uses jab more. You reckon I'd be slipping outside that jab and trying to land the hook? Do you reckon the hook will? I don't know. And every now and then Stallone would stick his head in and go, yeah, I think you need to use the right hand more. And you just look back at him and go, what? But I'm not talking about this to impress anyone, but more to impress upon people that I saw all this, when I was a kid. Yeah, before it happened. I'm looking at pictures of Ray fighting Thomas Hearns, and on HBO for the green belt, wearing Ray's gloves, all these kind of things, Yeah. So, I know for a fact now, because I've lived it, how to have an idea in your mind and then be able to create that in your experience. Reality. And to be able to create the picture and then do the work that's required to be able to, manifest that. Yeah. And, when you talk about manifestation, all these sorts of things, it's not some airy-fairy spiritual thing that you go oogly boog and then boom, it arrives in your hand. Like there's you got to do what's required. You got to do what must be done. 100%. Yeah. And then, you create the opportunity for those things to be able to go bang into place, Yeah. These are the biggest things that I learned over there. But being going through these experiences, it was just it was crazy, And then it's more than that. Like when they were talking about creating The Contender, the reality show, the TV show, The Contender, and I was there at Stallone's place when he was doing he was pitching Mark Burnett, and I'm sitting there, in his movie room, and he's going, it's going to look like this, and it'll be like this from Rocky, and we'll do it like this, and we'll have these fight-offs, and we'll do like a Vegas type thing, and I'm sort of sitting there going, I can't believe I'm in the room, I can't believe I'm here. Yeah. Experiencing this, and then to be one of the coaches a few years later in Australia for the Australian version of it, was just.
But none of this happens if, as a young kid, you don't have dreams.
100%,
and you're not visualising where you're going to be. I mean, that is, I guess, in essence, the key to it all is that visualisation. And I mean, I know myself, my whole life, I've written goals on my bathroom mirror because I look at it every morning.
Yep, it's the best.
And I see it. Use a whiteboard marker for anyone who's listening. Use a whiteboard marker, it rubs off, you can rewrite them.
Yep.
Mate, it's a very, very powerful thing to do. And I think so many people, they sort of take it with a grain of salt. They don't think that writing out their goals, visualising what they want, look, like you say, it's not all airy-fairy. You got to put the work in. But, it's a proven fact that people that write out their goals and visualise what they want to do have, a far, far greater success rate than those that don't.
It's about imprinting upon your unconscious mind. Everything I do right now is about patterns, right? So everything that I teach is about patterns, whether it's correcting your life or learning boxing. Boxing is a technical application through repetition that creates a response within the body that is instinctual. Right? As you would understand on the football field. There's things that you could do without even thinking about it. And people would just look and go, how the hell does he do that? Right? But that's through years and years and years and years and years and years and years of doing that thing. And also, the amount of times when you fall asleep at night, and the last thoughts in your mind, and any sportsman listening to this will go, yes, that's it. Yeah. When you're falling asleep and the last thought in your mind is your greatest aspiration.
Mate, I used to think, and mate, even to the, I would think in my quiet time, all I would think about was how I would know who I'm playing and I would think about ways to beat that person.
Yep.
That's all that would consume my mind leading into a game. How am I going to beat that person? He does this, I can do that. I remember I played Canterbury one game many, many years ago, and I was a little winger, and because I was so little, every other winger, they'd just try to run over me.
Yep.
And it was when the stripping rule came in, you could steal the ball. And I said to my brother before the game, I said, what should I do tonight? And he goes, what? I said, Darryl Halligan will try and run straight over me. I'm going to steal the ball off him and I'm going to score. And it's exactly what happened. He ran at me, I stole the ball. I actually didn't score. I just got nipped on the heels and I passed to one of our front rowers who was coming through on the kick chase and I passed him and he scored. So, but it's that visualisation. And like you say, every athlete at the top level lives, they don't just play it, they live it. They live it when they're away from it. 100%. They live it when they're training. And that's what I guess for any young athlete who's listening to understand, it's not for yourself, I'm sure when you're coaching young kids that you're coaching right now, when they're with you, you know they're okay.
Yep.
Because they're with you.
Yep.
But 90% of their life, they're not with you.
Yes.
And you've got to be able to trust them, for one,
Yes.
to do the right things when they're away from you. And you know that just that 10% of time with you isn't enough, right?
Yes. 100%. And it's about in inspiring them and inspiring them to build a certain foundation within who they are, that they can then not be moved and not be shaken by anything that comes, and not be influenced by anything that comes at all. But again, it's more about, or as much about letting go also of any idea you have on how things are going to turn out. Yeah. Like you said, like you weren't the one who ended up scoring that try. You ended up passing it off. Yeah. But the thing is, as soon as you get the idea, like I was sit there and I'd look at these pictures, and have these pictures in my mind, they were imprinted upon my mind, But then when I got to the States and I'm ready to step into the ring against Thomas Adamek, I'm not stringent on how that's going to play out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You got to be just fluid with that.
Yeah, 100%. You get in there, you create the idea in your mind, and then just release it. Just let it go and get in and just enjoy it.
I imagine if you go into a ring and you are rigid, it's not going to be a good night for you, because if it doesn't go your way early, it's going to be a long night.
I've had a guy sit down in a corner and it was a Queensland title fight, and he sat down in the corner, he looked at me and he said, "It's not happening how it was supposed to happen." And I just said, "Brother, I could slap you right now. Like, get here, be present, mate. Because right now is what you have to deal with, not the idea in your head of what's going to happen."
Yeah.
But even talking about that's what people do every single day. They spend most of their day in their head and not actually present, living, experiencing their experience. They're experiencing their thoughts about their experience, And my second time around with my boxing career, that's exactly what I wanted to do. So coming back to what I was saying before, when I get in the ring and I would look around, I'd have this ritualistic thing that I would do, looking around the stadium.
Taking it in.
Take a massive deep breath in, I'd just breathe the whole experience in, because I was being 100% present and not in my mind experiencing the thoughts about about what was happening. I was actually experiencing what was happening.
So, mate, that fight at the United Center, the Chicago Bulls home center, and world famous center in front of a big crowd, Don King promotion. It was a war, mate. It was 12 rounds of just absolute brutality. You were cut, he was cut. There was blood everywhere. It was just two blokes just slugging it out. But the boxing was so impressive. Watching that fight, is there a moment when you think, "Oh, I should have gone there and I could have taken him out"? Or do you look at that fight and go, I did everything I could? I just know, I speak to many athletes and they're like, that loss I had then or here, I just does it play on your mind still to this day at all, or are you?
Not the first fight. The first fight is one that I can put my head on my pillow at the end of the day and be completely at peace with. Like, I really gave it gave it my all. I trained my heart out for it. It was almost the perfect lead up, the perfect fight, perfect execution for myself. And I didn't get the chocolates. That's cool. But I'm fine with that.
I thought in the 8th round, you had him wobble about 3 or 4 times. 100%. And it was like, he's going to knock him out.
Yeah.
He's just a tough bugger, huh?
Tough. So tough.
Like hitting him with a plank of wood and he wouldn't go down.
The second fight, that's another story.
Yeah.
I made a calculated decision then that I'm fine with it now.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it now, but it's taken me years to really, and that was, I dropped him in the first round and I was a masterful finisher, and if I got a taste of your blood, you're gone. It was just a matter of, how long, but you were gone. And I dropped him in that first round, and in my mind, I was like, well, he's so strong. If I just unload on him now and don't get him out of there, because I know he's tough, because I hit him with everything last time, I've got a marathon ahead of me. This is the first round. I've still got 11 more rounds ahead of me. And as I'm thinking that, I didn't jump on him to take him out, and that's probably one of the only, it's not a regret at all.
Yeah,
but it's
just one of those things.
But if I step left instead of right,
So, well, exactly. And you don't want to step the wrong way in my game when you're my size. You end up on the wrong side of someone's shoulder.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. A bit different being punched in the face, though. I've got to ask you, after that first fight, it was just a battle. I think he actually looked worse after the first fight than you did. His face was blown up. I mean, you were cut up too, but he was really swollen. He was really blown up. And you'd obviously just, belted the crap out of each other.
I had a brain hemorrhage after that first fight. A lot of people don't know this, and that was what was actually detrimental to me later on, when I fought Danny Green and that sort of thing that sort of played into that debacle. But I had a lot of internal damage that was done, and all of his you could sort of see.
Yeah. How does, the fight was so good, everybody wants to see it again.
Yep.
So does Don King come to you, and I've got to know how this works, because does Don King come to you and go, mate, we got to do that again? That was amazing. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of money on the table.
Yep.
It's a blockbuster fight. People want to see it again. It went the distance.
Yep.
How much time do they have before they come and knock on your door and go, hey, Briggsy, let's do this again? Because, how does your mind, how could you want to do that?
It's crazy because you do a post-fight press conference, and you're sitting at the table and everyone's got sunnies on because your face is a mess. And as we were waiting to walk up on the things, Thomas looked at me and he was like, I don't want to see you. And I'm like, I don't want to see you either, champ, And then, which was funny because after the second fight, he looked at me and he said, I'm never going to see you again as long as I live.
Yeah.
Good riddance, we're done. Forget about a third one, you know. And we laughed about that, about a year ago we had a conversation on the phone, which was really cool. But at the post-fight press conference, agents is a big thing. And you'd understand this, yeah? So agents, boxing agents, you have your manager, but then you have an agent. Your agent works with the sanctioning bodies and other promoters and that sort of thing to strategically manage the course of your career.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the manager's the one who does the deals, working with the agent. But the agent is the one that works with the sanctioning bodies and other fighters and that sort of thing, and the promoters. So the agents have come, Don King said, we've got to do this again. This is going to happen again. This is the best 12 rounds of boxing. It was like a Mickey Ward, a Turo Gatti only in the light heavyweight division, And then my agent, Kosazu had just fought Ricky Hatton and got beat. And I watched that in LA after my fight. And I spoke to Johnny Lewis whilst he was still in the UK. And he said, what are you doing, son? How are you feeling after the fight? And I said, I just want to come home, man. I've been here forever. And he said, I've always wanted to train you, son. And I said, yeah. And I said, what are you doing now? And he said, I think Kosh done, I'm going to tell him to hang it up, And I said, well, if I come home, would you coach me? And he said, mate, I'd love to. That'd be amazing. I said, I'll start putting things in place now. So I spoke to my agent. So I want to go home, start putting things together with Johnny, you know, for me to go home and for him to be my coach. And so we started going down that track, and then my agent Samson Lukowitz it rang me from South America, and he said, my son, listen, we got the rematch, it's going to happen, it's definitely. And as he's talking to me, I remember I'm talking to you right now, I'm sitting in my kitchen in LA, and I'm on the phone to him, and my head started hurting straight away. I was excited, but my head just started hurting.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh wow. Oh my God. And then all the fear started, you know, because
is it fear or is it anxiety? Or is it like a because I have this when I used to run out on a football field, being a little guy, right? And I was pretty handy. I could run fast. So it was like the big guys wanted to get a hold of me.
Yep.
So it wasn't like when I ran out onto a football field, it wasn't like if I was going to get hurt. I knew I was going to get hurt.
Yes.
It was just like, how much am I going to get hurt?
Yes.
And that created like an anxiety in me until I got hit. Once I got hit, I was fine.
Yep.
But until then, like the 15 minutes before a game, I was spewing in the toilets. I was just hopeless. Once I got onto the field, and got hit. Once I got hit, I was fine. Is that a sort of a, because I mean, there's no question you're going out there to put your body on the line.
100%. And I'll just touch on something quickly with a conversation that I had with Mike Tyson about when he got beaten by Buster Douglas. You know, like I said to him, you were invincible. And he said, yeah. And I call it a Mike Tyson syndrome. Yeah. And I had that because I hadn't lost a fight in the ring or on the street anywhere in like 13 years or something. Yeah. So that was the first fight. So it was all of a sudden, oh, hang on a sec, I am beatable, because I thought I was invincible. Yeah. You know, in more ways than one.
Well, it's probably a good attitude to have though when you're going.
Yeah, you got to have it. You have to. You know, and I that's a conversation I had with Mike, and he said no one could beat me. They just couldn't beat me. But then, what that fight with Buster Douglas taught him was that he was human. Yeah, he was like,
and that might just that little seed of doubt.
Yes, 100%. So this was the biggest thing. So I knew in the second fight. I liken the first fight to jumping off a 12-story building 12 times. Yeah. You know, every round was like I'm hitting the deck. And now I've got to walk back up the stairs and jump off the top. I know what I'm in for. So now people say you always fear the unknown. Yeah, true. Yeah, and you also fear the known, especially when pain's involved.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I remember I was laying in bed in LA, and my kid's mother and my kids and that had come back to Australia, and I was sort of packing the house up and everything in LA and getting ready to sort of come back to the Gold Coast before we moved to Sydney to train with Johnny Lewis, you know, for the second fight. And I'm laying in bed, and I had the closest thing to what you could. I've never experienced an anxiety attack or a panic attack or anything like that, but I had the closest thing to probably that. And I was just laying in bed,
you might have actually had it.
Yeah,
you just don't even realise you had it.
But I was laying in bed and I was paralyzed. I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do it. Yeah, like I can't do this again. I can't do these 12 rounds again. And then I never used that word can't. And yet I'd used it, I don't know how many times in about 30-second space.
How did you overcome that? Because you went on to have another absolute war with him, and like I said before, was touted as, you know, the best back-to-back, like the best 24 rounds of boxing in the light heavyweight division or across the board. Like to actually back that up after having those fears and those doubts, because many athletes have them, and some of them never overcome them. How did you overcome it?
Well, it was voted in Ring Magazine in 2010 as the 9th and 10th best light heavyweight title fights of all time. Yeah. You know, and I laid in bed in LA and just went, this is when I learned about presence, how to be present, how to be here now. You know, I didn't understand it yet until years later working with an incredible mentor, but this was the first experience of it. I sort of said to myself, oh my God, I was freaking out. I'm thinking, hang on a second, dude. You're freaking out about thoughts.
Wow. That's
it. None of these thoughts are real. You're laying in bed. You can feel the bed on your back in bed. It's a comfy bed, and it's a comfy house. And soon you're going to be in a comfy car going to a comfy plane.
That's quite profound.
Yeah,
really. To actually think that just off your own.
Yep. It was just there's right here, right now, nothing's happening. And I was like, okay, what if I can do that in every single moment? And then so leading into, and then all of a sudden all the anxiety just went, or that feeling of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
I then learned that, hang on a sec, so anxiety is the exact same frequency as excitement, except I'm experiencing it through a negative filter, or a filter of destruction.
Yeah.
And so what if I could turn that filter into a more powerful experience rather than one of destruction and eternal annihilation, blah, 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 drama, right? That the ego and mind loves to do. And so that's what I started to develop. I thought, well, the more I can just be present, the more I started to just relax, and my body would relax and it would open up. And I thought, man, maybe I'm onto something here. So I started making that my discipline, just to try and be as present as I possibly could.
Yeah. Wow.
And this is what helped me to sort of work through a lot of the anguish and perceived trauma, from my life. And it was just like, hang on, none of this stuff even exists anymore. They're all just thoughts.
Yeah. Mate, you did an amazing job to go back into that ring and fight. And after that fight, I mean, you lost that second fight on points.
Yep.
Another 12-round battle. What are you thinking after that? Where do I go from here, or do I keep boxing? I mean, were you considering like I got to hang him up, or because I know Don King came out and said no, Paul Briggs is not retiring. He's got plenty more boxing in him. He's a world-class athlete.
Yep. I feeding back into the beginning of the conversation, with regards to setting goals. I realized that the greatest mistake that I'd made was I placed so much emphasis on that green belt, that to attempt it again for the second time, it was like, and not get there, it was just absolutely devastating to me, it really crippled me. And this is where I started to go back into that self preservation sort of patterns that I created that were really destructive.
Right.
This is how I look after myself. I destroy the world, not myself, right?
Yep.
But in destroying the world, I actually destroy myself.
Yep.
If that makes sense. So I start to develop this destructive behavior, and I get angry and I start, projecting that anger and all the rest of it. So I hadn't done any of the internal work that I had done, at all that I have done now back then. Not even close to it. I hadn't even begun that journey. So I was still a lunatic.
Yeah, right.
So I didn't have the tools to be able to understand it. Although I had, I was very much a introspective thinker. Yeah. Sometimes to my detriment.
Yeah. It sort of, you think so much, it sort of hurts your head. You sort of wonder, you can sort of go down a rabbit hole with that stuff, can't you?
100%. Yeah. So after the second fight, it was more about, especially because my health started to fail. I had a couple more fights, and it was like, man, I just can't train hard anymore. I can't spar anymore. I can't get hit anymore.
And that sort of, I guess, brings me to your retirement. Was it a nervous system condition that sort of broke you down to the point where you had no choice but to retire?
I was in the ring in Sydney, and I think I was shadowboxing. I was warming up to do something, and Johnny Lewis was looking at me. He was watching me. And he was watching me in a weird way. I was like, he's never looked at me like that before. And then we started to, I had a sparring session on, and I started to spar. I think halfway through the first round, he got up on the side of the ring and he said, son, I want you to go and get every neurological test that you can get. And it was massive for me. I was like, what do you mean?
That would have been a shock.
I was like, and then I realized, oh man, I'm not right at all. Yeah. So that's when it began. I started getting all the tests, and they said, well, you got the precursors to Parkinson's, and this is, if you continue on, you've just got to stop.
Yeah. Was that a hard way for you to sort of, I guess, bow out at that stage? Because I know, I think the people in sport who really struggle with their retirement are the ones that don't get to retire when they want to retire.
Yep.
It's the ones that are pushed out through injury or their form doesn't warrant selection and they're sort of moved on. And, you see these guys
100%.
still playing park footy at 40 years old and, it's like, let it go, but they can't because they didn't get the chance to leave at the top level when they wanted. How were you positioned mentally at that point?
That's when I realised I just had no internal foundation whatsoever at all. What does that mean? Well, I didn't have the tools to be able to cope with exiting in that way, which is exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. I didn't have the tools. And so therefore, how did I cope with really, really painful experiences in my life?
Yeah.
Hurt the world. Right. Let's kill the world. I become a violent mofo. And then I was like, well, I can't even do that because that's I'm a pushover now.
Yeah, right.
I can't. I'm not even I'm not even that guy now. Like so I can't even do that.
Yeah.
So I was forced to go within.
Yeah, right.
And it's funny, when the student's ready, the master appears, and that's when I met an incredible mentor of mine who just went, time to grow up, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
we all get to that age, some younger than others, and I think it took me a while. I think I was about 30 when I realised.
Yeah,
that was sort of like coincided with me coming to the Titans, to be honest.
Yes,
and hence, I feel like my best 4 years of my career in league were actually with the Titans. I was the slowest I'd ever been. I was probably not the strongest I'd ever been, but I played the best I'd ever played. Yeah.
Because there would have been the complete balance, and I talk about this all the time, there would have been the complete balance between your psychological aptitude and your physical capabilities, right? You might not have physically been at your peak, but psychologically you definitely were.
Yeah.
And so therefore there was the balance of those two. And I say this all the time, like the most dangerous fighter that you can get is a guy who has wisdom, he has poise, he has grace, and he's mastered his need to have anything now.
Yeah.
So he has
patience.
Yeah, he has incredible patience.
Yeah. That's a scary fighter.
Mate,
so you retired, but then you have this opportunity. I mean, well, you were going to go down to middleweight and fight Mundine, and that's when you sort of got pushed out through health reasons, right? You couldn't fight.
Yeah, we were sort of talking about it, and then it was just like, oh man, get a grip.
Yeah, right.
I was in the midst of trying to heal myself, so it was like that's not even doable, So that sort of saved me there, because Choc would ice me at that point.
Yeah.
And then so I was 3 years retired. I was well on my way to sort of starting to understand how to heal myself.
Yeah.
And I was at SeaWorld with my kids.
Right.
And I got a call from Denny Green himself, rang me and just said, mate, let's get it on. I was like, yeah, we kind of had a bit of a,
Did he know how you were physically though?
Yep.
Or
100%.
Was he?
That's why I was just about to say we kind of had a bit of a, I was like, well, you turned me down twice, when I was
at your
good
best
to go at my best, and you want me now, and I'm a gibberer,
Yeah. So what did you? I mean, you finished fighting professionally for a few years, so the money
3 years,
3 years, so the money dries up.
I was in a.
Do you think he was ringing you to do you a favour, or do you think he was ringing you because he just wanted to fight someone he could beat?
I can't speak of what his motivation actually was at all. I'm not going to try and do that, but all I know is that I was 3 years retired. I had issues. Angelo Hyder had said to him, because Angelo rang me and said, mate, I don't think this is a good thing.
Yeah, right.
I've told Danny, don't take this fight, So do I blame him for it? No, not at all, because I accepted it.
Yeah, of course.
And it was the greatest fight of my life.
I've heard you say that, and this is what I want to get to. We haven't got heaps of time, but this is a really important part that I wanted to chat about because, I've been through some really challenging times in my life, and I look back at them now over time, and I think that I wouldn't change a thing. That was, billed as a farce. It was, the media scrutiny, the public, the social media, like the way that blew up. I couldn't imagine being in your shoes. I did that show Survivor, and I voted the wrong way according to the public who support that show, and I got lit up.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. Like it really affected me. For someone in your position to go through what you went through after having the fights like with Adamak and winning titles and then finishing on that note. Why did Western Australia grant you a licence when New South Wales wouldn't? Is that?
Well, I have no idea why they would. At the time, I cooked everyone that tried to. I was an ignorant man.
So you fooled the system. Do you think?
No, I didn't fool the system. Greenie just said, we'll move it to Perth. Because they know they could get it past there.
Yeah.
So, and then I was an ignorant man. I turned around and cooked all the boxing officials. You all old farts, you this, you that. I was so wrong in the way that I reacted and the way that I condemned them for trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
That just proves the insanity of the man at the time.
Yeah.
That was me, and the funny thing was that I sparred 100 rounds, just over 100 rounds for that fight. And
so you'd been hit.
Yeah, they were hard rounds, and usually what happens is your prep starts off hectic, right? And then you get sharper and faster and your eye comes in and you're missing shots. I went the other way.
Right.
The more I sparred, the harder I trained, the worse I got.
Okay.
To the point where there was one sparring session I think it was in Perth. And there was a couple of Lebs watching, Lebanese guys watching, and they ran out texting people just saying, Paul Briggs is gone. Bet everything on Green to knock him out in the first round. Yeah. So there was this massive push.
Big plunge on
And it was one of my last sparring sessions. So they knew I was that close to the fight. I'm not getting better. I'm getting worse. So there was this mad push with people just dumping money on Greenie to knock me out in the first round because I was cooked. And the interesting thing was this, and this was never publicised at all. No one reported on this. All they reported on was the fact that not that I took a dive, was the fact that the fight was a farce.
Yeah.
And how was it a farce? It was a farce because of the fact that the doctor at the Western Australian Boxing Commission, when he did the final examination on me, looked at me and said, "You have some major neurological issues going on." And I had a corner man in the room with me. There was two of us and the doctor. And the doctor said to me, "You have some major neurological issues going on. You can't even stand on one foot. How are you ever going to fight? This is a world title fight."
Yeah.
I can't, I can't, there's no way I can clear you. And I said, "Well, I'm a fighter. You're a doctor. And all I do is fight. Like, you can cut my legs off, like that Monty Python skit. Yeah. You can cut my legs off, cut my arms off.
The Knights who say
yeah. I'll just keep trying to, drag myself at you and bite your ankles. That's just in a fighter's nature to do. Yeah. And he took a minute. He stood there for about a minute just looking at me and took a deep breath and just said, "Okay, I'll sign off on it," and signed off on it. That was never reported on. Do I condemn that doctor? No, not at all. Did you do the wrong thing? Yeah, perhaps. There was no duty of care, I would suppose. Again, do I condemn him for it? No, not at all, because it was perfect. It's completely transformed my life, that fight. Would you want to make that mistake again as a doctor? No, definitely not. No. So I'm not here to judge anybody from that perspective. I'm only here to correct myself, And so in that, the fight went ahead and it went the way it went.
How did you handle the fallout? I imagine at that point in your life, not being as, I guess, as good as you are now mentally.
Yep.
I could imagine you just would have wanted to dig a hole and hide.
Oh, it was hectic. I had people messaging me on Facebook saying because they paid $40 for a pay-per-view and they got that sort of stuff that they hope I get AIDS and die. And it was devastating to me. And then at that time I met, my mentor that's just completely transformed my life over the last 12 years. And he sort of said, perfect. Now we begin. We begin doing the work on you actually becoming a warrior, not just talking about being a warrior. Yeah. And it was incredibly profound for me to learn how to build foundation within myself. And this is everything that I teach and within my gym and what I do with young men. Building that foundation within myself so that I am unmoved. There's nothing that can come at me that can bother me now, nothing at all. You can stand in front of me and say your life's going to end in the next 2 minutes, and I'll go beautiful. Yeah, literally. And that's not being a tough guy. That's just being at peace. Yeah. And not being held into anything, holding on to nothing here. So I've let go of all of those aspects of what I thought was myself, and really come to a new understanding of who I really am.
And you think without that Danny Green fight, that probably doesn't happen.
No, it wouldn't have happened at all. It was so profound because I was an egomaniac.
Hence that being the best fight of your life.
I didn't value people. I didn't value money. I didn't value opportunity. I didn't value myself. I didn't value life. I didn't value anything. Yeah. So that taught me to value everything, including the little things, Yeah. I can put my head on my pillow at the end of the day and be completely at peace. Yeah. And for me, that's my world title.
Wow, that's amazing. I think that's a great note to finish on. Briggsy, I will remember you for two of the most brutal fights that I've ever seen in my life. I've got the utmost respect for your achievements and probably the most respect for the man you've become out of all of it. So thanks for coming along to the Blood Bin.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Unreal.
Good man.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Blood Bin for Rogers Sports Management. Make sure to like, subscribe and find us on all the social media channels. Just search for Rogers Sports Management on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. We're also on TikTok. And we out.